Some years ago, when John Ashcroft was Attorney General, he compelled the Justice Department to do a thorough analysis of the Second Amendment. And the analysis that came back was quite accurate and quite favorable to your position. You want to comment on that?
Attorney General Ashcroft's position in writing that the Second Amendment protected an individual right sounded good until you got down to the "yeah, but," because it also said subject to regulation. Well, there goes the ball game. We thought we had a good set of rules until we read far enough in what he said, and then we realized he might as well have been looking at the Illinois state constitution, which protects the right to keep and bear arms, subject to the police power.
A lot of criminals kill other criminals, and I guess that removes some of the criminals from the potential of going out and harming innocent people, but large numbers of criminals being killed each year by gun-wielding intended crime victims and so forth. Why is there such a huge amount of people with the misconception that having a gun for self-defense is a bad idea?
The biggest single reason for people failing to understand the effectiveness of individual gun ownership and individuals carrying guns in reducing crime stems from the media, which filters out successful defensive gun uses. I debated a man one time on television who said, what you're talking about and what John Lott talks about with all the studies that he's done, that more guns mean less crime, why, we just never see anything like that in the media, so it can't be true. He actually said that. Well, let me give you an example of how the filter works. It stems, I think, from a worldview that's imbued in people as they go through the government school systems and through our higher education system. At the Appalachian School of Law several years ago, a fellow decided that he was failing in school and that was the fault of the teachers, and he was going to kill some. And he killed two of them, a dean and another professor. Two of the law students then, and it was a small campus which made this scenario possible, ran off campus to their vehicles, got their handguns, and came back on the campus. As this failing student was preparing to reload his gun, they drew down on him with their guns and said, "Drop it," and he did. And then a number of students tackled the assailant at that time. Only two local papers pointed out that the situation had been resolved by defensive gun use. A number of papers, and I believe also the Associated Press account, which is what most people saw around the world, that talked about students having tackled the assailant with no reference to he had dropped the gun and he was under control of two gun-bearing students. Subsequently, there was an interview in the Kansas City Star with the editor who had been over and actually had put out the reporter's story. He put it out over the AP wire. And he was asked, well, so why did you not put anything in there? Because it was ascertained that he did know that the defensive gun use had been involved. Why didn't you mention that? He says, oh, when I saw that these students had gone and introduced guns into an already dangerous situation, I knew that we couldn't encourage that by running anything like that. That's why we don't see anything in the media typically about defensive gun use.
Wouldn't it have been nice if there had been some of those students at Virginia Tech?
It would have been very nice had there been some of those students at Virginia Tech, but Virginia Tech is huge, and to have run off the campus and then to come back on would have meant that it was all over by the time they got back. This was only possible at a little law school up in the mountains where the campus literally was not that big, and the only thing going on there was a few hundred law students being educated.
Colorado church shooting. It's just the general.
The contrast in the media, when they deal with a mass murder in a gun-free zone, is to ignore the fact that it was a gun-free zone and to focus on the bleeding bodies. And to put it crudely, they roll out the hearse. And, we're just there grieving because of this carnage that has been visited upon the school or the mall, wherever it was a gun-free zone. The contrast couldn't be greater with the Appalachian School of Law. Or there was a school dance in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, where a catering manager got a gun and stopped a killer, where in Pearl, Mississippi, assistant principal went, very much like the Appalachian School of Law students, he went off the campus, got his gun out of his vehicle, came back, stopped the killer. Those get, at most, 1 day of attention in a limited run of media, and then it disappears. And there's no more follow-up scenes about how devastating it might or might not have been for the assistant principal or the students to have faced this dangerous situation, and how are they coping with it, and what do the victims that weren't victims say about the foresight and courage and clear-headed action of these people. And when the most dramatic saving use of defensive guns occurred at the New Life Church in Colorado Springs late last year, or early, I guess in 2008, the media dropped that like a hot rock. And yet here you had a volunteer, turned out to be part of a detail of some 20 members of the church who were carrying regularly because they had agreed to be part of a security detail. And when trouble came, they were ready. They stopped the killer. And you would think that this would, where's the follow-up questions? After Columbine, there were all kinds of follow-up questions about how many guns should we be banning now? We need more gun control, don't we, Mr. Politician? Or for that matter, they said the same to us. That's why we got so upset with the way the media was handling it that we put out a news release saying the problem with Columbine was there weren't enough guns at the school. And that's when I got on Katie Couric's Today Show, and the New York Times did a big profile. Who could say such a thing, that we need more? Well, apparently more guns at New Life Church meant more lives saved. And that connection wasn't focused on. That was dropped like a rock. No politician was confronted saying, because there are states where you can carry a concealed firearm, but the law prohibits you from carrying it on a property of a church. Mr. State Legislature, in view of what happened over in Colorado, are you going to get rid of the law here in Mississippi or here in Arkansas or wherever that prohibits people from being able to protect themselves like they did at the New Life Church? No politician was put on the spot whatsoever.